Welcome once again to the DraftKings Daily Trot. I'm Big Italy 42. He is Josh Shepardson at Beachhead 50. And once again, Friday night is the Aces night. Ton of good arms on the mounds. Also some bad arms on the mound that you don't want to pick on. So, obviously, Felix Hernandez here, $11,300 is a $1,500 discount to Clayton Kershaw, $12,800. Same price. I slightly prefer Kershaw. I know it's going to be a hot topic whichever way you go. I think they're both great options, of course, in their matchups, Houston and San Diego. But I think price considered, you got to have Felix slightly above Kershaw. And then outside of that, Michael Pineda, $8,900, gets a Baltimore team who is striking out a ton, over 26% over 25%, I should say, over the past 2 weeks. One of the highest in the league over the season throughout righties. And all Pineda did last time he faced these guys was rack up 16 Ks in 7 innings. So you're certainly not looking that way, but you certainly know that it's possible that he drops somewhere in between his average and there. I mean, 10 to 12 strikeouts, certainly not out of the realm of possibility with him tonight.
Yeah, not at all. And the nice thing is that under $9,000, you can conceivably put him on a roster with Felix and still have some wiggle room to put together a decent lineup. So I really like Felix as my top arm. Price considered, I still think Kershaw's probably the second highest ceiling arm today, but at $8,900, it's going to be hard to go off of Pineda. He's right up there, and in GPPs, it's not crazy to think that you headline your rotation with Pineda as your SP1 and then grab another value play and spend up on bats, because Pineda definitely has the upside to match a Felix or a Kershaw. I mean, like you said, the 16 strikeout performance, that's been done. We've seen him do it. We know he's capable of it. So if that slider and his fastball and changeup are working, I mean, it's going to be a long night for Orioles hitters.
Yeah, absolutely. And not a lot of other great options as we're looking. I'm going to throw out Alex Wood. Not that I love him, but I think he's a great contrarian tournament option. Mets striking out 23.3% of the time against lefties. Decent team WOBA, decent team ISO, but this is a guy who we haven't really seen it this year, but we've seen it in the past where he can rack up strikeouts in a hurry. Seemingly he always does it against Washington, strangely enough, but he definitely has that upside. If you look at his strikeout numbers on the year, it doesn't indicate that, but $8,600 is going to be very, very low owned. And if you're going for a one-of tournament bullet, maybe pair him with one of these top arms and one of your favorite stacks, I think he's a nice swerve tonight.
Yep. Some of the other names that I like Yordan Ventura against a Matt Holliday-less Cardinals lineup. Definitely less imposing without him in that lineup. $7,600 makes for a decent SP2. My favorite SP2 is actually Jesse Chavez, though. $7,300 facing an Angels team that isn't very good against right-handed pitchers. I do think he's going to be a popular arm, though, in terms of SP2s, because you're going to need that cheaper arm to offset the cost of a Felix or a Kershaw, and I think he's going to be a popular one that people turn to as salary relief. That's because he's been very good this year as a starter.
Yeah, and you can certainly consider a guy like Danny Salazar as well. You tend to think he's going to be pretty popular at $9,400 tonight, especially because he did have a ton of success against this Detroit team last time out. At Comerica, had 11 Ks in 7 innings, 33.8 fantasy points. So, going to be a popular play for that reason. With multiple tournament lineups, I probably won't have a lot of him, but I think he's a fine play because we know this Detroit team, they disappear at times, but they also score 12 runs in a game at times. So, his home run rate is concerning, 1.31 per 9 in this matchup, but the upside's certainly there.
Yeah, and one more name that you mentioned before the podcast that's good is actually opposing Jesse Chavez, and that's Hector Santiago. A's are not very good against left-handed pitching. They don't strike out a lot, as you noted, but they are not good against left-handed pitching. So Santiago's actually pitched surprisingly well this year. So either side of that, you're getting a cheap SP2 that has a good shot at least giving you a quality start. Getting the W could be tough because both of them are capable of putting up some zeros.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be my other option. So with that being said, going to be a lot of low-owned pitchers outside of those top guys. So, pick your spots. Maybe if you just feel comfortable with the top guys, all three of those guys we mentioned at first, all in great spots. Moving over here to catcher, I love Russell Martin. I love all the Toronto righties against Joe Kelly, who has some nasty reverse splits this season. You look at his numbers against righties this year, 379 WOBA allowed, 6 home runs, 24 earned runs in 26 and a third innings, 17 walks to 22 Ks. Could be a long night for him. Toronto, one of my favorite stacks DraftKings must have been anticipating that I and others will be on them because they're very expensive tonight. It's going to be a hard stack to pay for with some pitching that you like, but we'll highlight some values to help you get some of these stacks in, though.
Definitely. At catcher, we both agree Brian McCann looks good at Camden Yards against Ubaldo Jimenez. $4,100, not the worst price tag in the world. Opposing him is Matt Wieters. So if you're not using Michael Pineda, I do like the switch hitting Wieters against Pineda just a bit. He's been raking since he's gotten off the disabled list. So he's a strong play. Salvador Perez, wish he hit higher in the lineup. If by chance Ned Yost does the right thing and moves him up against the lefty tonight, $3,700, a lot easier to swallow when you're not paying for a 7-hitter. If he's still hitting 7th, probably going to go elsewhere, but if he moves up to, say, 6th or 5th or something in the lineup like that, then you got to start to consider him. But we haven't seen Yost do it yet, so I'm not holding my breath on that.
Ned Yost is not going to do that for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's Ned Yost.
Yeah.
At the same price point, I like your boy Robinson Chirinos as well. Hits for power against left-handed pitchers, and yet he continues to kind of fly under the radar, I feel like, when he gets one. Otherwise, I'm probably going to be dipping into the punting territory. Yan Gomes against David Price, nice GPP play at 3,300. He hits lefties hard. I expect him to move up in the order, maybe hit as high as 5th tonight because they are such a lefty dominant lineup. You do tend to see Gomes move up when they do get one. But beyond that, I mean, one name that I threw out that's going to provide tons of salary relief is Wellington Castillo at $2,100. Madison Bumgarner, obviously a very tough assignment, but Castillo hits left-handed pitching fairly well. Going to hit down order, but you don't care at $2,100. As I was saying to Justin before the podcast, I'm hoping his jersey gets clipped and we end up getting one of those HBPs where he just ends up getting you some points there. I mean, honestly, it doesn't take much to pay off the $2,100 price tag, and because you're paying so little a catcher, you're going to have a lot to spend elsewhere if you opt to go that route.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great call. I mean, $2,100 is just an insane discount. You don't need much, like you said. First base, going back to Toronto, I love Edwin Encarnacion. Being the most expensive, he's going to be low owned. Same thing goes for Miguel Cabrera against a guy who should be fairly popular in Danny Salazar. Great tournament option, you mentioned, but you should already know about this as he's facing a lefty. It is a good lefty, though. Paul Goldschmidt, he's in San Francisco, $4,700. Got to like him. If we're talking cash games, a guy that I like that's very cheap, Adrian Gonzalez is $3,900 tonight against Odresimer de Spain. And, that's a guy that I am looking to pick on. 329 WOBA allowed to lefties isn't terrible, but, I mean, Adrian Gonzalez is not your average left-handed hitter.
Yeah, I mean, he feels like a guy that you almost have to stick into your cash games lineups because he's so cheap and he's so consistent and so good against right-handed pitching. A couple other names that I'll throw out there, not many, but I like Kyle Blanks. I like him a lot better in the outfield than at first base, but at $4,300, probably going to be overlooked by a lot of people. Does hammer left-handed pitching. I like Chris Davis and GPPs. Again, if you're not using Pineda, maybe take a chance that golden sombrero is not worn by Chris Davis tonight. Instead, maybe he finds the seats and only strikes out 3 times. And then I'm also looking at Brandon Belt a little bit. Chase Anderson, pitching well this year, but on tonight's slate, you could say is middle of the pack or lesser starting pitcher. I mean, there's a lot of really good, talented pitchers, so grabbing somebody like Belt and picking on Anderson a little bit isn't the worst idea.
Yeah, I think we need to come up with an alternate term for Golden Sombrero where you don't quite make it there. You have one less strikeout. Maybe like a smaller hat, maybe a silver hat instead of a gold one. I don't know. We'll have to come up with something. But he would be wearing that hat quite often. It'd be like a permanent fixture. It'd be almost more like a haircut he would have to get for the 3 strikeouts a game. But either way, moving on to second base. Brian Dozier is going to be an awesome tournament option as he always is against lefties. $5,300. For him, if you want a very cheap option, Jake Elmore should be in the lineup against the lefty and John Danks. He's absolute minimum at $2,000. Not going to probably do a whole lot, but you don't need him to do a whole lot. If he gets a hit and scores a run, you're thrilled. Other options, love D. Gordon against Kyle Kendrick. Kyle Kendrick is an absolute train wreck, especially against left-handed pitching or left-handed hitting. I'm sure he probably isn't too good against left-handed pitching either. But 424 WOBA allowed to lefties. And D. Gordon, he's not a great hitter. He's been a very good hitter this year. But, I mean, all he needs to do is get on base. Neither one of these catchers is going to be throwing out D. Gordon on the base pass. So if he gets on, I expect big things. And Stolen base is very heavily weighted on DraftKings, 5 points. So, I mean, that's a double for you right there. So, get yourself some D. Gordon in your tournament lineups tonight.
Yeah, and if you're looking to skimp a little bit at the position, I like $3,700 Neil Walker against Kevin Correa. Correa is in that rarefied air of being arguably the worst pitcher on the slate. There are a few bad ones. He's going to throw his hat in the ring for that claim. Colton Wong against Giordano Ventura, just $3,600, gets to hit leadoff, gets a righty. Gotta like Wong's power speed combination, and he's hit very well this year. He's really blossoming into the player that the club hoped he'd be when they drafted him with the first round pick. And speaking of cheap members of the Tampa Bay Rays who are second base eligible, Logan Forsythe is just $3,200. And
That's a good point.
Again, speaking of pitchers who could make the claim of worst pitcher on the slate, we got John Danks opposing the Rays tonight. So, yes, he will occasionally pull these ridiculous shutouts out of his behind, but I'm not seeing that tonight, and I do like Forsythe just a little bit.
Yeah, and whether he's worst pitcher or not, he might have worst current image of any of these pitchers with all this stuff going on with him. But, yeah, that's a great call. A guy that I'd kind of overlooked earlier, but, I mean, he's been crushing lefties. So, I'll throw out Dustin Pedroia also. We were talking before the show. You had mentioned last year that, or you had mentioned about last year that Drew Hutchison had struggles with lefties, was good against righties. It's the opposite this season. Big time reverse splits, 372 WOBA allowed to righties, and actually pretty damn good against lefties so far, 276 WOBA allowed. So Dustin Pedroia certainly in play at 4,100 as well.
Yep, I'd agree.
All right, third base, Evan Longoria. Play Evan Longoria in your cash games, and then don't worry about it. Like, that's who you need to play. He's $3,800, crushes lefties. We already talked about John Danks. Good person, not good person. He's a terrible pitcher. You want to target any lefty with Longoria, especially one like him. So DraftKings doing you a favor with this $3,800 discount, so take advantage in your cash games. No surprise here. I love Josh Donaldson in a righty-righty matchup. The guy is just incredible this year. I mean, he's getting 2 hits in almost every game right now. Got 17 homers. He's going to be way low owned tonight at that $5,200 price tag.
Yep, and another guy that's pricey that I think is going to be fairly low owned is Miguel Cabrera, 4,800. Danny Salazar, very good, but if there is a fly in the ointment for Danny Salazar, it's that he does give up the long ball just a little bit, and by a little bit, I mean it is a problem. Homeritis is certainly has afflicted him at times in the past, so grabbing Cabrera looks pretty decent. $4,200 Alex Rodriguez at Camden Yards, not a bad play against Ubaldo Jimenez. Rodriguez is really hitting right-handed pitching well this year. Guy that I like in tournaments because I think he's going to be incredibly low-owned. Like, we're talking 1% low-owned. Trevor Plouffe, $4,200. Same price point as guys like A-Rod and Harrison and Manny Machado and Maikel Franco. $100 more than Anthony Rendon. $200 more than Matt Carpenter. So you're not going to see a lot of ownership for Trevor Plouffe, but all the guy does is crush left-handed pitching. Going to hit in a favorable lineup spot for the Twins. Get some of him, get him and Dozier together on a few of your GPP rosters, and you could really be setting yourself ahead of the pack. Yeah,
I'm absolutely with you there. And then I'll throw out one more cheap guy. Obviously a very tough matchup, Luis Valbuena. I mean, the guy doesn't do much other than hit home runs, so if King Felix makes a mistake to him, he can certainly punish him, and $2,900 I think is a nice tournament option.
Yep.
Shortstop, Jose Reyes, my top option. Troy Tulowitzki, not too far behind. After meeting the buzzsaw that is David Phelps last night, I think he might be primed to take advantage of another young pitcher here, and Jose Urena. So I like him. Other options, I love Ian Desmond in tournaments against Mike Fiers and his struggles with the long ball. Desmond hasn't been hitting particularly well. Fiers hasn't been awful, but we know that he certainly has big-time downside. So Desmond at 37, probably my favorite tournament option.
Gotta like Hanley as well, noting that righty-righty issue for Hutchison this year. $4,600 gives you some serious salary relief from the two top options at shortstop, Tulo and Reyes. You're saving $700 from pivoting down to Hanley from Tulo and $600 moving down from Reyes. Peralta always gets a favorable lineup spot, typically hitting third or cleanup. So $4,200, not a bad price to pay for him against Ventura. But if I'm paying down at the position, I'm looking at Xander Bogaerts, righty-righty with Hutchison again. $3,600. He seems to be figuring it out this year. I definitely like him a lot. And then, I mean, whenever he gets a lefty, you can pretty much count on me talking up Marcus Semien. $3,400 against Hector Santiago. I really like him a lot as a cheap guy with some upside at the shortstop position.
Yeah, and there's not many of those guys, so certainly take advantage of that. Outfield, these first 5 guys we don't really need to tell you about. Giancarlo Stanton, Jose Bautista, Bryce Harper, Andrew McCutchen, Mike Trout, all elite plays against anyone, if you ask me. Get those guys in your lineups if you want some upside. None of those guys in a tough matchup by any means. Mike Trout probably the worst of them, but Jesse Chavez, still not a guy that's scary if you're playing Mike Trout. Chavez is the guy you worry about with the other hitters maybe in the Angels lineup. But I like Brett Gardner a lot as a tournament option against Ubaldo Jimenez. Once again, going back to the stolen bases, I love targeting stolen bases in GPPs. It's a great way to set yourself apart without having to have a long ball. And then we talked before the show, if Nelson Cruz is back, he gets a bad lefty, and Brett Oberholzer at $4,700. Going to be really hard to pass him up in tournaments if he's back in the lineup.
Probably going to be the highest owned outfielder, I would guess, in terms of the elite guys, if he is in the lineup tonight. He just hammers lefties. He offers quite a bit. I mean, he's $1,000 cheaper than Stanton. He's $800 cheaper than Bautista. So that's big money that you're saving by moving down to him, and you're not sacrificing anything. I'm a fan of Kyle Blanks, as I said before. At $4,300, I think he's going to be easy to overlook. You have to like the Tigers' power hitting outfielders.
Yep.
JD Martinez, Yoenis Cespedes. If the homeritis afflicts Danny Salazar tonight, you're going to want some of these outfielders because they're probably going to be the ones punishing him. I also, speaking of power, I love Steven Souza against John Danks tonight. Love him. He reached the seats last night off of Garrett Richards. Danks is not Garrett Richards, and Steven Souza can hit the ball a long way. At $4,100, I expect him to be super low owned because he's the exact same price as more highly touted rookie Jock Peterson. Peterson looks good, don't get me wrong, but I think Souza's a nice swerve off of him at that same price point.
Yeah, absolutely. Couple cheap guys to mention for you here. Gerardo Parra, homered last night, $2,900. You're certainly not chasing a home run, but I'm not a big believer in Jordan Zimmerman. He's a contact pitcher at this point. Ricky Weeks, $2,900. You can play him at second base also. And then I love Darren Ruff. Didn't really mention him much at first base, but at $3K against Jeff Locke, great spot against the lefty. And then give you a couple other value guys and then see what else you got. Andre Ethier at $3,000 against Adrismer de Spain is a nice spot for him. $3,200 for Billy Burns, another guy with stolen base upside. And then Cameron Maybin, really been hitting the ball really well, $3,200 against Bartolo Colon.
Yep, I'll add another guy from that game, and he's a guy that we also did not touch on at first base because, quite frankly, he's a better fit in the outfield. $3,400 Michael Kadire against Alex Wood. Yep. Hits left-handed pitching really well. We love Chris Colabello on the podcast. You know it by now. He's going to get Joe Kelly tonight. And if you like the Blue Jays, he's one of the more affordable ones that you can go ahead and stick in your lineup. And I'll throw this out there as as I said before the show, it's a good GPP swerve. He's going to be low owned because he is facing the man, Clayton Kershaw. Justin Upton, $3,800. If you want to go contrarian and you want to shoot for the moon, Justin Upton can hit the ball to the moon. So he seems like a decent target in GPPs. You never want to pick on Kershaw, but if you're going to try and set yourself apart, make a contrarian play, $3,800 Justin Upton looks like a decent one to me. I mean, as good as Kershaw is, all it takes is one mistake to him. But looking in that same price point range, Christian Yelich moved up to third in the lineup last night, $3,900. He's left-handed, which is great when you're facing Kyle Kendrick. And then speaking of lefties, Mark Trumbo gets to face one. We know Mark Trumbo does a lot of damage against left-handed pitching. He's at Minute Maid Park tonight. Good ballpark for hitting home runs, and so I like Trumbo at 38 as well.
Absolutely. He's a great call. Big time upside there. And with that, that's going to wrap things up. Find us on Twitter at DF Cafe. Subscribe to this YouTube channel and check out all of our great content at dailyfantasycafe.com.